Morning class, I'm Will Kemp from Will Kemp Art School, and this is part one in a free series showing you how to get started in acrylic landscape painting. We're going to start with this image. You can download it straight from my website, and I'm going to show you how to make this, how to get this painting from the photograph so you can do it yourself at home. On the website I've got a list of all the colours you need, the brushes that I use, but this video is just how to get started, get your drawing laid out, so you can create a lovely landscape like this to hang on your wall at home. So step one in starting this landscape painting is to block out your canvas to put a colour ground onto it so that you can work your paintings on top. I've already done that here, and you can watch a how to do it video on my how to apply a colour ground for acrylic painting video. Okay, the second step is to draw out the basic shapes that we've got here. We're just after the line drawing. I'm using a 3B pencil here, which can be easily erased. It won't smudge too much, yet it's dark enough to make a mark. See how it's fairly easily it makes a mark onto the canvas without feeling that you have to really press it into it, you know, and dent the canvas. So a quick tip to make sure you get, you know, a nice horizontal is just to use a piece of scrap paper, and you line up this edge to the edge of your canvas. So it's like a set square really. So there, line that up. So step two is to assess the tones that we've got in the picture to see where to start and where are the lightest and dark areas. So the first thing to do is to squint your eyes at this picture. Are they squinted? Half close them, just so everything slightly blurs a bit. What you'll find this does is it makes the darks look darker, the lights look lighter, and all these what are called half tones kind of disappear. What you really get to is the basic structure of the picture, and that's what we're interested in. So for this, the darkest area is this area here of the land, so that's what I'm going to painting to start with the burnt umber. All the information on the brushes that I use and how to choose a brush for acrylic painting is on my other video, or a list of materials is on my website. So notice how when I'm painting, I'm resting onto the canvas, which helps you give leverage and support, so you can, with the finer lines, it's a lot easier to get a straighter line than if you're hovering your hand in the air trying to balance it. So once I've got that in, I'm now going to swap to this brush to block in that area. The paint that I've got on here, because acrylics dry so quickly, you want to make sure you get that off, otherwise it will go solid on your brush and you won't be able to use it. So I'll dip it into some water, and then, you know, rub it into the kitchen roll. You get through loads of kitchen roll with acrylic. And then just squeeze it at the end, and you see how if I put that on there, nothing comes out. It's, you know, completely clear. That's just with, you know, plain water. It's always better to have more water and change it regularly than use the same pot. It get mucky, and then what will happen is that all that dirt in your water pot will come into your colours when you're mixing, and you won't get a nice clean colour. Even though we're using brown, it's still good to keep it clean. It's good professional working habits. Okay, so now with the filbert brush, okay, as simple as that. I often paint around the edge for my paintings, so I'll paint around here. You notice how I haven't been too heavy-handed. You can still see some of this underground glowing through, and that's really nice. And I've left little bits where I'm not being completely solid because I want a bit of texture, a bit of movement in this area. So that's all I do for this particular painting with the burnt umber. Now I'll put in some of the highest highlights, the brightest area, which are going to be, when we look at the picture, they're going to be, these area here where the sun is, shining through. So this, I'm just going to use titanium white. So now with the titanium white, I'm just going to, again, block in the very brightest areas. See how I'm keeping it quite loose and, quite watery? You'll notice if you're not using an artist quality titanium white, it won't be as thick as this. It'll be a lot more translucent and you might have to use a couple of layers. When you're first starting with acrylics, I always advise buying the best quality paints you can afford. If you can't afford to go artist quality of everything, definitely try and invest in an artist quality white, because it will have so much more opacity. It will be able to, you see how it's covered over the colour underneath very easily. This will be really, really beneficial in your future paintings. There's a slight bit of lightness down here, but not as strong as the others, so I'll just dilute it with a bit of water and then just scrub it in with my finger. So now we've got the lights and the darks. Now we can go back to the colours that we were mixing before to start blocking in some of the areas of colour. Morning class, welcome to part 2 of this acrylic landscape painting techniques video on how to create a landscape painting. So now we've got our darkest dark and our lightest light, we can introduce the colours that we pre-mixed previously. If you're unsure how to mix any of these colours, have a look at my video how to match acrylic paint colours for a landscape painting. I think that's what it's called anyway. And I go through how I matched these 3 colours to this landscape. This painting is going to be quite a painterly approach, just to block in some colours, get you started in painting, build your confidence and have some fun. Okay, here we go with the first blue that we mixed the colour match for the sky. This is using the filbert brush. If you've got a flat brush, that'll be absolutely fine as well. So you notice when I'm coming to the edge of the line, I'm not like trying to draw out that edge. I'm not going, in really finely to, to draw it. Or what often is a tendency for beginners is that you, get the smallest brush you can find, and you start to paint, and you do like one little millimetre at a time. You end up with one area you're painting you're really happy with, and you think, oh, this is brilliant. And other areas won't be finished or gone to the same level, and you can get too precious about your painting. See how I'm, just kind of putting it on and being quite general with it. It will give you a better sense of freedom, and you won't get as precious, and your painting will have a bit of your personality into it. So this area here, where I know that it's going to be lighter than this, but I still want to get rid of this yellow. I'll just add a bit of water to it, and again, you see how I use the side of the filbert, and you can just soften it in. You know, you've got a general tone on there, but it's not too hard. You don't want to build it up too thick, because then it's harder to work over the top and to change the colour that you've got underneath it. So because this is still wet, you see how you get a soft blend? That's nice for clouds because you're not left with such a hard edge. And if I've gone further over, I can add a bit of that blue, you know, just work it back into it. What I'm doing off camera is I've got a piece of kitchen roll that when I do a stroke on here, and then say I want to then swap the colour, I'm just kind of working it into the kitchen roll, and then I go into the other colour. So you don't have to wash your brush out between every single brush stroke, especially if the tones are very close like these two, that I know that I'm going to be doing, you know, a blend between the two. So again on this edge, see how I grab a bit of you know, the paint onto the brush, the lighter blue, and then work it kind of half over, and it's very soft. You know, if you see how, you know, how gently I can work that, and it will just you know, and it will just soften it in just to blend that edge. What you don't want to do is have a cloud that looks like you've taken a big, you know, Sharpie marker and you know, kind of gone around the edge and outlined it. It's always better to keep it softer. It's very easy to put in a hard edge later if you need to kind of, you know, accentuate one part of it. For these parts in here, where it is a bit closer, you could, you know, still do it with the filbert, but if you want to get it a bit more precise, you just swap back to your round brush. And if you remember this lighter colour that I pre-mixed previously, you can now just, you know, add in a bit of that. So on this area, because when we look at the picture again, you can see how it's got, you know, warmth underneath it. The way that you can work thinly with acrylics is more of like a glaze process to kind of blush it in on here, not as heavy as this, so we get some of that colour, you know, shining through. See how I've made it a bit more liquid. Again, you know, I'm putting it on but being quite light. You see how now that's got, you know, a bit of a warmed glow. It's using what's called optical mixing, where the colours are optically mixed between using glazing, and the colour is made on the viewer's eye rather than having to actually mix precisely every single colour that you see in front of you. So now I've got that here and that's thinner, I might go in with this paint again, just to make it a bit thicker on parts so I know that's got a real good solid tone to it. And I'm just kind of looking over it to try and see if there's any areas that stand out. Okay, we can now introduce some of the creamy colour that we mixed previously. Okay, we can now introduce some of the creamy colour that we mixed previously. Often use my finger just to blend an edge. Often in paintings you'll notice that the top left hand and top right hand corners, especially in landscape paintings, have got a darker tone to them. This is really handy because it helps to bring the viewer's focus into the centre of the piece. So now to start to put in some of the sea area, it's just another mixture. It's very close to the top mixture, but it's just with the ultramarine blue and the white. That's all it's got in it. So it's very simple to mix. Where I've got some of the reflection from this colour coming into the water, I'll just take a bit of this paint, and that'll probably still be a little bit damp. So you see how it mixes it to make that greeny tinge that we've got in the water. So the next colour I've got is just some of this pre-mixed colour that we mixed for the cloud, just with a bit of white in. You see how it cools it down as well as lightens it up, just so we can start to paint in some of the reflected light from this cloud that's onto the beach. I'm not worried if I don't cover this over completely, because it's quite nice to have a bit of texture, especially because this is, you know, like sand on the beach. It's a bit darker, so I use the darker colour. And this corner here is a bit bluer. So you can put some of the blue, that lighter purple on, and then you can mix some of the blue into it. Put in some of that local colour. So now the basics to your acrylic landscape painting are blocked in. If you've got this far, brilliant. You know, I hope you're really pleased with it. It's been very straightforward. We haven't used many colours. So now you can start to bring it to the next level of finish. I'm going to add some more of the pure blue and some of the crimson red that we've got, so we can start to get the real pinky pink that comes through the sky and darken some of the corners, as I was mentioning before, you know, to finish the painting off. Morning class, this is Will Kemp from Will Kemp Art School. This is part 4, the final part in this free acrylic painting landscape course. I'm just going to add some ultramarine blue and some alizarin crimson to get started. So this pink here is just a mix between the white and the crimson. That's all it is. Just start with the white, add a tiny amount of the crimson. You don't need much at all to get this nice bright pink. I'm going to blend that edge to keep it a bit softer. Again, some of this colour, some of the blue colour that we had for the sea. And you know, you can just, you know, break it up. I said for the sea, I use the one for the sky, but mistakes happen when you're painting. So I'm just lightening this with the white, and this areas here I can just, you know, add a touch to. So with the bright pink, it's nice that, isn't it? And you see how I can work side to side, you know, just to feather that edge from it. I can then now tone down that pink a bit with this other blue that we'd already pre-mixed. And you notice, you know, on this side of the picture, There's a little bit of it here and a little bit of that colour down there. You can see that down there.
Will you count me in?
So now just with some more of the blue onto the pre-mixed sky colour. Might add a little bit to that corner. So now when we have another look at the picture, we'll see how the burnt umber that we first put in here is too warm and not dark enough. So we can just mix a black between using the burnt umber, add some of that blue to it, the ultramarine blue, and you see how that gives us, you know, a lovely dark black. We can start to just put in especially on the base of the land. You don't need to worry too much about the top. I quite like having part of it there. Then with the white on here, I'm just going to add a little highlight, and I use quite a dry brush so it breaks on the texture of the canvas surface. A really lovely painterly approach, and sometimes this is just what you're after. You know, a real feeling of the brush marks, the movement. You can of course work more into a painting to make it more realistic, but sometimes these just work absolutely at real cracking little paintings. What I'd now do to bring it to a better finish is I'd start to introduce glazes in different colours and just to work on the whole thing just a bit more. This is Will Kemp from Will Kemp Art School. If you want to paint along with this, you can go to my website. There's a link to a download to this picture and all the steps that I've gone through on here, so you can follow along at home. I'd love to see your results. Let's get painting. For more advanced acrylic techniques, have a look at my course, The Art of Acrylics.